Year. This is New Year's Eve? Maybe not quite. We celebrate Christ the King Sunday today, not because the church has celebrated this Sunday forever, but because a pope decided in 1925 that we needed to do so. So here we are. It's not a bad thing. We've all agreed with him. The point he was trying to make was that the reign of Christ seemed to be ignored by the world, and so it needed a time when we came together to celebrate Christ as the King of our lives. And so you would think that we would read about some glorious time in Jesus' life, but then think about what we've been reading for the last several months in the Gospel of Mark and also the Gospel of John. Do you remember a lot of glorious moments? Maybe not too many, at least not in what the world would call glorious moments. And certainly today's reading from his trial by Pilate doesn't feel very glorious at all, does it? At the beginning of this week, when Jesus is in Jerusalem, he entered the city riding on the colt of a donkey. Not a great horse, not even a great donkey, a colt, a little one, small, quiet, untrained. What we know, not from the Gospels, but from history, is that on the other side of the city, there was another entry, another triumphal entry into Jerusalem. It was the entry of Pilate and his mighty forces, and he rode not on a horse, but in a chariot driven by horses. Everybody was supposed to cheer and applaud because he was the authority in the land. The one who comes to Jerusalem at the time of the Passover, not to celebrate, I'm not a Jew, am I? But to make sure that that's all the Jews did. You're allowed to celebrate Passover, but don't be doing any uprising. Don't be talking any treason. Don't be gathering in large groups that I can't take care of and control. I'm here to make sure you stay down. And he ignores what happens on the other side of the city because he's not really interested in Jesus. Pilate probably has heard about Jesus. Of course, Herod had, so you must assume that Pilate had also, but Jesus isn't on his map. He's just another guy. There's some people that are following him, but the authorities in the temple, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, the high priests, the Sanhedrin, they're all against him, so what's to worry? What's to worry? My triumphal entry is going to remind these people whose they are and where they belong, down under my thumb. We see here the second scene in this story of Pilate and Jesus and this trial. You see, the people who accuse Jesus, the Sanhedrin, the high priests, want to accuse him of blasphemy, and they can do that. But that's not a hanging offense, because in Judaism, you can't stone anybody, you can't crucify them, you can't kill them. But Rome can. And so they have to change the tune. They have to go from this man is blasphemous to this man speaks as if he were king of the Jews, were king of Israel. And we all know who that king is, and it's not Jesus. You, Pilate, you are the authority here. You represent the king. And so we appeal to you to try this man and have him crucified. He does not deserve to live. But they won't come into the palace to make those accusations because it's about to be Passover, and going into the palace would make them unclean, don't you know? And we have to keep our rituals, don't we? We have to make sure everything's just right, that we're kosher, that everything's good. So they're outside. And Pilate has to go out to them to hear what they have to say. Now think about that. This is like, I don't know, the president of any country in the world having to go out to the striking miners, the striking UAW, whoever it is that's raising a ruckus outside on a picket line, and go talk to them and ask them what's going on. Right away, that authority level's come down a little bit, hasn't it? Because he's coming down to their level. And then he goes back in to talk to Jesus. And he says to Jesus, "Are you the King of the Jews?" Well, that's a "are you guilty or not guilty" question as far as he's concerned. And King of the Jews is what he's been told by these people is this crime that the man has committed. And that's all he knows about him, except the bad things that have been told to him. So he already has a bias, a prejudice against Jesus that he probably didn't have when he rode into the city in his triumphal entry. It's happened since then. He's been listening. He doesn't like what people are saying. He doesn't think this man is actually pretty good for the country after all. He might be a problem. So he's going to try to nail Jesus by saying, "Are you the King of the Jews?" He already knows what the answer should be. And Jesus won't answer him. Jesus says, "Are you asking on your own behalf? Or is that what others have told you about me?" Well, that's not a yes or a no, is it? That's not even a maybe. That's a what? Right away, Jesus has turned the tables. For it is no longer Jesus who is on trial. It is Pilate. It is Pilate's bias. It is Pilate's prejudice. It is Pilate's desire to keep things on a cool level by giving in to the authorities of the temple. He doesn't really care, even still, whether Jesus is crucified or not. He just wants to keep things on an even keel so there's not a riot. And so he listens to the people and says, "Well, I'll go with them. That's good. We can do that." And Jesus says, "Are you sure? Is that really what I am? Do you think that, or does somebody else think that?" And of course, Pilate immediately tries to get himself out of it and says, "Well, I'm not a Jew, am I? How would I know?" Jesus won't take that either. Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this world." Now, right away, Pilate and most everybody else in this world wants to say, well, that means his kingdom's from heaven or somewhere else. It's not here. For Pilate, the world is the Mediterranean basin. He doesn't know anything else. There is something else. There are lots of something else's, but he's not interested in those places. But Jesus has used the word kingdom, and that's enough for him. That'll kill him right there. We don't have to worry about anything else. But he wants to know about this kingdom, and Jesus just won't tell him. And Jesus just doesn't tell us either. My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my people would be rising up like a military force and taking over. Well, we know that's not what Jesus did. We know Jesus didn't even have a military force. Yes, we're going to read later on that somebody had a sword and cut off somebody else's ear, but that's hardly a military force. We want to paint a kingdom picture with the only words we know, and they're earthly words. And that's not the kingdom Jesus is talking about. Think again about that entry into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. Jesus rides humbly on the colt of an ass, a donkey. He doesn't wave, he doesn't smile, there's no band. Gosh, what's a parade without a band? I can't imagine. He just comes into the city, and it's the people who respond to him. He doesn't set it up. They don't know they're supposed to do that. It's a response from their hearts because they have faith in this man and in what he has done throughout his ministry. And what he has done is quiet, it's unassuming, it's compassionate, it's kind, it's caring, and it's rebellious. So maybe some in that crowd are hoping that that means that Jesus really is going to raise up an army, and this is going to be the week. We're going to get it back. We're going to take over. But they're still thinking in earthly terms. And Jesus says the earthly terms we use are not the right ones. We are not to think about taking over, about winning, about getting to the next level, about overpowering somebody. We are to think about the underside of life, the poor, the oppressed, the blind, the widow, the orphan, the lame, those who cannot for themselves speak, who need us to do that. And that's what Jesus has done. And that's what's really made the people in the temple nervous. Because if Jesus is compassionate enough for those people to rise up, they might be in trouble. And they like things just the way they are. They like the status quo. They like having more than enough because they have more than enough. They have what they need and they have a lot of what they want. I was reminded this week when I was visiting people that I've spoken about power twice in the last several weeks, and that's because power is one of the things that Jesus fights so mightily against. Jesus is not fighting for power here. Pilate thinks he has it. The temple priests and the Sanhedrin think they have it. And Jesus is not in either one of those camps. Because Jesus knows that power is not what he is here for. And he says, I have come to testify to the truth. We didn't read it this morning, but do you remember what Pilate's answer to that was? What is truth? What is truth? It's not in kingly language. It's not in the language that we use even in our hymns this morning, even in our readings sometimes, because those are the only words we have. It is in the life and ministry and the death and resurrection of the Christ. And it doesn't look like any earthly power we will ever encounter. We have to make that place. We have to make that kingdom. And we don't do it by throwing ourselves around and being powerful people. We do it by feeding the hungry. We do it by helping the poor and the homeless. We do it by loving one another, caring for one another, even when we might just think we don't really have the time to do that. But it's what Jesus did, and so it's what we're supposed to do. And in doing that, we will bring the truth closer to the rest of the world. The truth that God loves us. The truth that all that we have and all that we are is from God. There are no fancy words to describe it. We continue to call Christ King of Kings and Lord of Lords because we need those words. And quite frankly, where else in the world do they, in our world in particular, do we ever use those words? We do not have a society in which lords rule it over their people, where serfs are lowly and downtrodden, actually slaves. Yes, there are slaves in this world, and we know that. And many people are working to rectify that. But in our world, we don't talk about lords. We don't talk about kings. The only king we ever talk about, and actually it's a queen now, is Elizabeth. And what is she really? She will tell you she's not a queen in the sense of might, in the sense of power and authority. My sister and I rewatched The Crown not too many weeks ago, and over and over again she says, it's not my authority. I don't have the power to do that. That belongs to the Parliament. It is not mine. How hard that must be to wear that crown, to carry that scepter. Both of those weigh too much for me to bother carrying anyway. But to have all that stuff and not be able to do anything for your people. Well, Jesus doesn't want all that stuff. Jesus doesn't want us to want all that stuff. Jesus wants us to do things for our people, all of our people, however we can. I don't know how that will be for you. I'm not always sure how it is for me. And I think that's because we wait for the Lord to point us in the right direction, to keep us on the path, to show us the truth, and then encourage us to act on it. And whether we do or not is entirely up to us. Because even though all that we have and all that we are is from God, God also says you have the free will to decide what you're going to do with that. I'm sure that at the beginning of creation, God probably had a plan A. I have no idea what letter he's on now, but I'm pretty sure he's been through all the alphabets of the world. And he's still trying to come up with another one because we have so messed up plan A, B, C, D, Q, L, Z, whatever. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Het. I don't know the Cyrillic alphabet or the Arabic, so I'm going to stop there. But God loves us anyway. And God is still telling us that God is the truth, that Christ is the way, the truth, and the life, and we just have to keep going there, even when we know we've screwed up one time before and we're probably going to do it again. But it'll be okay, maybe. It will be okay in God's eyes, because God forgives us when we realize we've done wrong and ask for that forgiveness. But there might be some atonement we need to do. So as we come to this week of Thanksgiving, we give thanks for the fact that all that we have and all that we are is of God, and that God has given us that. But we need to think about how maybe we need to atone, how we might need to work on one particular aspect of our life that is weighing us down, pulling us from the truth, and trying desperately to make us hang on to this world, when we know the kingdom is not of this world. The language will never be clear. We will never get a complete picture and go, that's it. That's what Jesus meant. Because Jesus never gives us those words. But Jesus gives us the signs. Signs in ourselves, signs in others. Signs in places, signs where there doesn't seem to be a place, but there is a Jesus. My brothers and sisters, give thanks and think about how you need to give better thanks.